But it raises this question to me around performance enhancing drugs and the testing as a whole across all the sports. So I went to digging and found some information around this. And what I was fascinated by is the varying degrees of testing between all of the major sports, from football, baseball, basketball, um, hockey, NASCAR, and boxing, track, tennis, just a wide range of standards. What was also interesting to me is that in almost all of them, during their primary season, every athlete is tested during the season at least once.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the world of NASCAR, tennis, and boxing, there are some variations that allow for wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
So it got me thinking. This whole thing with PEDs. Do you think it's overstated, overregulated? Because typically they're testing for anabolic steroids, androgenic, estrogen reducing drugs, hormones, blood, doping, and then in a few leagues they also test for illegal narcotics, PCP, LSD, marijuana, cocaine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that we know enough to really regulate this in the way that it's been done heretofore?
I don't know that we. I think we know enough. I think we have to specify what it is we're trying to accomplish with the whole PED thing, right? In my mind, PEDs is such a wide scope of things that could be considered performance enhancing drugs, so to speak. So I think it needs to be specify exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish. Are we trying to keep people from taking steroids? Or are we trying to keep people from having a perceived advantage?
Mm-hmm.
If so, how are they achieving that advantage? Because the thing is with so a lot of people think, you know, some people think that steroids just make you big, huge, and strong, out of this world. And to my knowledge, that's not the case. What they do is they allow your body to recover much quicker so that
Right.
you can work much more and much harder. Right.
Which in
So
turn can make you bigger and stronger.
can make you bigger and stronger. But what I'm saying is people act like you stick a needle in you and it's like the Incredible Hulk. You just
You
rip out your clothes and you're just an animal now. Right. Like Popeye with the spinach. Like that was steroid. But I think
I said I am.
right. So there's two ways to look at it, right? So I agree with you. It does give you are at a disadvantage if you're not using said drug, right? Because you have to do a workout today, and then I have to give my body tomorrow to recover and then go back the next day. Whereas you, Mr. Steroid Man, you worked out this morning and you're going back this evening and
Right.
you're working out tomorrow. You know what I mean? Over a year's time, you done got a lot more work in than me. So yes, I agree with that's unfair. But there's so many other things that could be. I mean, so I know with track and field, at least at one time, Sis ran for Nike for a bit. And this was years ago. This was probably close to 20 years ago. But she had to be subject to testing. And the way it worked, whenever they called you, if you came up in the lottery or whatever. Now, also, track and field is at one time, and probably still is, was a hotbed for PEDs, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of investigations going on. Marion Jones and many others. So at the time, if your number came up or whatever, you got a call, they needed to be able to reach out and touch you within a certain amount of time. I mean, 30 minutes, an hour, something like that.
I think it's still that way.
Yeah, okay. So I know you couldn't be out of pocket. Couldn't be like, oh, I'm out of the country. I'll be back next week. Can we just reschedule? No. Where are you at? We'll be there immediately. You know what I mean? And I understand why they were doing that. But she had a list of things that would flag on a test. I mean, stuff like it was certain cold medicines that she couldn't
Hmm.
take. It was certain because it would flag as something else. You know what I mean? So I think we can go too far as well. I guess is the point I'm
I
making.
think that's my concern is that I think we when you're down to the point where these athletes put themselves through a grind to get there, right?
Right.
For some of them, you're up at dark 30, getting a run in at the track. You're home, smash some breakfast, let your body recover for a few hours, and you're back for an afternoon workout. And you're at the gym, you're on the field, you're doing your work, and that might be a 2-3 hour workout. You're home, lunch, relax, little snack, maybe a light supper, rest. You're back out at it again in the evening, doing some weight training, and then you're home for the evening and try to recover to go do that all again. You know, you catch a cold and you want to take an over-the-counter antihistamine, you run the risk of now something coming up because they can't regulate out in the testing to distinguish between Tylenol extra strength cold plus and a steroid or
Right.
some other performance enhancing drug. That's where I think it's problematic. If you can't regulate it well, if you can't test for it well, then think about the damage. Because that person can't take cold medicine, they take something else. I mean, unless you're providing the alternative, and it's possible, right? It's possible that they've got the alternative there. Oh well, you can't take Tylenol, but you can take Alka Seltzer, maybe,
Right.
right? But I don't know that that's the case either. I mean, because usually these medicines are using the same ingredients, it's just a different label. So my concern is that we're trying to legislate something, and when you look at the penalties, they also vary. Right? NFL, you lose 4 games right off the bat.
Mhm.
Second offense, you lose 8. Third offense, you lose a season, and they're hitting your pockets each time. NBA is a little bit more lenient. Baseball's 50 games. Second offense, whole season. Um, they all seem to be willing to forgive over time and let you back in. But they're, at the end of the day, you're losing money.
Right.
And so I think some would say, okay, the onus is on the player to know what's at stake. But I'm saying the legislative bodies can't necessarily regulate. We talked, I think, maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago when we were talking about Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon got flagged, name smeared in the paper. Fans don't know what's up, but he missed the test because he was on vacation, and they called, like they did in track.
Mhm.
They called to say, hey, we want to schedule a test, and they didn't know he was going to be traveling. So he couldn't be there within the 2 hour time frame that they
Right.
scheduled. So he misses a test. Oh, missed the test. That means all of a sudden,
Right.
you broke the policy, violated policy. So the press release doesn't say, hey, Josh was out of the country at a time that it's random. So how do you know when they're going to call?
Right.
And because of it, you know, unfortunately, these are our rules. Or because of it, we're not going to enforce it now. I mean, the discretion is there, but they don't use it, right? So that's my concern. Like there are these gaps in what I think needs to be in place to legislate it. I don't know where we go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key. Like you just led up to. I think a policy definitely has to be in place. We know that, but I think it's how we administer it is what needs to be fixed. Not necessarily the testing, not necessarily the policy, but we gotta use some common sense. It can't just be up red. Gotcha.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, you were
Got
sniffing
him.
when you were sniffing, and you did have a runny nose when you came in here. And you say you
Right.
took antihistamine, and maybe he's telling the truth. You know what I mean? Maybe he, So I think all of that has to be taken into consideration, and I think we can't afford to just be. It's not black and white. It's not that simple. And I think at one time it was because there weren't as many different variations of drugs. There was a time where, excuse,
He
excuse me,
got you. Got him.
got me. I Should have took my steroids this morning. I was watching a baseball player. Man, I can't think of his name, and he was one of my favorites. He's Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry's cousin. You know who I'm talking
about. Sheffield, Gary Sheffield.
Hard nose, Gary Sheffield, yeah.
Yeah.
They were having a conversation with him. This is back when the Barry Bonds stuff was going on, the Clear was like a big name of stuff that was being used. It was different. It was like a lotion, like you rubbed it on your body. It wasn't a needle. And they were talking to him. He did an interview, and they were talking with him, and he said, they said, "Have you ever done steroids?" And he said, "No." Gary Sheffield says this. They were talking with him about whatever. He said, "I ain't never done steroids." And he was serious. He looked right in the camera, and he was like, "I've never in my life." And they said, and I'm paraphrasing, this was a long time ago. Did you ever have conversations with the trainer that what's his name was hooked in with? And, that trainer, it ended up that trainer had a lot to do. There were a lot of different names attached to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, did you ever have conversations with the trainer? He was like, "Yes, I did." Did he ever give you anything to help with your training sessions? And he said, "Yes." And he said, he gave him Clear and some lotion.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Well, do you understand that was was steroids or a performance enhancing drug?" And he said, "No." He said, "If you're talking to me about steroids is taking a needle and jabbing it in your butt. Right. That's steroids."
Right.
It just didn't register that steroids could be anything other than that.
So here we are, right? And I'm assuming anybody who's ever played anything, we've all had some steroidal cream. Hydrocortisone is a steroidal cream. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like at the end, that's where I think we go so far as to label things without informing or educating. So you got this whole slew of reporters who right now are not going to vote Barry Bonds. I will never vote Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame, which I think not voting Pete Rose or Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame is asinine, because what they did on the field is worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. But if all you can link Barry Bonds to is the cream he was using to help with his recovery that had a steroidal agent in it, how can you justify that a guy who has maybe a tenth of the cartilage left in his knee that he needs to get around can't get pain relief to do the job that kids and parents are paying for, that the league and league owners are banking on, that advertisers are paying gazillions of dollars for, so that he can go out and do his job well? That's where I'm lost. That's where, to me, it's like you can't have it both ways. I want you to do these amazing feats because the profits are astronomical, but I don't want you to relieve yourself of pain. I'd rather you be whining and writhing on the floor after a game and telling me you can't play back to back because I really can't stand up right now. No, not. It's hard for me to stand up. I cannot stand up right now.